Okay.
Hi, welcome to the New York Parrot Literary Corner. I am Dustin Pickering, your host. Today we have Elizabeth Robin, who is a retired high school teacher, has two collections through Finishing Line Press, Where Green Meets Blue, and Silk Purses and Lemonade. To My Dreamcatcher will be out in 2022. She is the 2021 winner of the Carrie McCrae Nickens Fellowship. Her work in that competition, Judge Tiana Clark said, I see a lunar lyricism reflected by this poet. Language is mystical, mythic, sublime, and romantic. The haunting imagery is fresh and allows for strangeness, devastation, and delight in a way that captures me as a reader. As a poet of witness and discovery, Robin tells the stories of those pushed into the margins. She will or did appear most recently in Ukulele, Poetry Society of South Carolina Yearbook 2021, COMET Buses, Catfish Stew 2021, Drunk Monkeys, Ripples, The Broadkill Review, I Am Not a Silent Poet, and Blue Mountain Review. Robin MCs an open mic and literary programs on Hilton Head Island. Thanks for joining us today, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You make me sound good.
Oh, yes, I love to make people sound great. It's what I do best. So I'm curious, in your bio here, you mentioned something called Poetry of Witness and Discovery. I'm curious if you could give us an idea of what Poetry of Witness is. It's a phrase I've heard quite frequently.
I'm not sure technically if I could give you the proper definition. I'm not as schooled as many, but
Just in
poets
your
of
opinion, what
witness,
you feel, what
yeah,
you feel it's about.
I think it's about the idea that poets are the eyes of our culture and society,
Okay.
and that we chronicle life as it's happening. It's a very
Right.
immediate.
And
Yeah.
there's an excellent anthology called Against Forgetting by Carolyn Forche, which she refers to that phrase. That's where I first heard that. And that's all stuff like witnessing devastation, war, and genocide and things like that. And it's a kind of interesting concept. And so I was curious what your take on it was. And as far as you work with Finishing Line Press, you have two collections already available and one coming in the near future. So maybe you could give us an idea of what the titles explore, what your titles are about, and your themes you explore in your poetry.
Okay. I actually fell into poetry by accident. I was a nonfiction writer,
Okay.
and things started happening in my personal life that were rather difficult and kind of bang, bang, bang. So poetry seemed to be the only way I could get it out. Silk Purses and Lemonade was the outgrowth of that, as I went through 27 months of my brother being sick and dying of leukemia. And about a little over a year after that, my husband died of melanoma. And I was writing some pretty depressing stuff. And a friend of mine was just like, Robin, at some point, you need to start seeing the glass more half full again. This isn't you. This isn't who I'd ever been. I'd
Right.
always been able to pick myself up and keep going. So that's where the title came from, Silk Purses and Lemonade. It was about, writing to try and write your way out of that bottom, really.
Right.
And so
Very effective tool, poetry.
well, that and my dog Byron kind of saved my life.
Is that after the poet Byron?
Absolutely. I named all my pets after literary figures, but this particular dog is a darkly handsome, romantic boy. So it seemed and a good swimmer.
Dogs are great. Dogs are so much fun. Does the dog ever appear in your writing?
I actually have written a a nonfiction piece, a long one about a trip we took in
Okay.
2018, and I'm shopping that right now,
Excellent.
called Travels with Byron. And yeah, it was he and I, it literally, where Green Meets Blue
Mhm.
arrived at my house.
Okay.
I unpacked it and I left. I never promoted that book. It was terrible. I'm surprised Finishing Line Press still likes me because I really,
I've
I was,
heard that they're excellent with their authors.
they're awesome. They're awesome.
Editor there, Leah Maines, is very friendly. I've talked
Yes,
several times. She's very nice.
yes. They're supportive. They school you on a lot of things that um, Silk Purses and Lemonade was my first publication.
Right.
So, I knew nothing. I'm not sure I know a whole lot now, but I know I've made
Okay.
a lot of errors
Yeah,
that I've
start somewhere.
but
And they have a great reputation. And I know so many great poets who've published with them. They do not just pick anybody, any old person. They do have a lot of high quality work that they've published. So it's
yeah,
good. I mean, it's glad to be that
been
family.
I've
Yeah.
I meet Finishing Line Press authors all the time. And actually I'm thinking of creating a literary event here that's just a Finishing Line Press event.
Oh
Um,
wow. Okay.
but yeah, I do stuff like that all the time, different things that I've been trying to bring to the island. And of course I started doing it and I had a venue and everything, and then COVID happened.
Right.
So
Terrible.
everything went to Zoom.
Right.
And I'm just starting back with my live open mic on June 30th. That'll be the first event on the island that I do live. So it's been a long haul to get back to where I was,
So
But I
you're up.
didn't
Well, go
answer
ahead.
your question. I
Oh,
didn't finish answering.
that's okay. Go ahead. You can finish. I kind of interrupted you a little bit.
I tend to do that. I tend to just like go off.
Digress. Yeah.
Um,
All right.
where Green Meets Blue
Hmm.
actually is that book is an homage to my husband, my late husband, and
Mhm.
the things that he loved. He was a Jersey man, born and bred. He had never lived anywhere else, and we used to visit Hilton Head Island because my brother lived here, and we were leaving one day, and he's like, "Let's retire and move here." So I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
because New Jersey was not my home. It was just where I lived for 25 years. You'd think I got used to it, but I
Mhm.
never really did. So, we made a plan and we did that. And he just loved it here, but only got to live here 6 years. And
Hmm.
he used to look up at the sky and just make that comment about where green meets blue. That's the place.
Hmm.
He loved that. Uh, that whole idea of the sky and the trees, and it's beautiful here. And so that's where that one comes from. And so a lot of the poems in there are an homage to him, to the Low Country,
Uh-huh.
to our relationship, and to my dream catcher.
I was about to
um
ask about that. That's an
yeah,
interesting. Is that like is it like when you write to my dream catcher, is it like a long poem or is it like little tribute poems or is there some kind of method to that?
I I went to the Palm Beach Poetry Festival
Hmm.
in 2018. It's a wonderful festival, by the way, if you're ever looking for a recommendation on where someone should workshop. But there was a poet that was going to be there named Tim Siebels. I don't know if you know him. At the time, he was the poet laureate of Virginia. He's a wonderful poet,
Hmm.
um, and a wonderful teacher. And I got into his workshop. So, um, I'm sitting in his workshop, and I had pieces of a poem that was to my dream catcher. And he stops in the middle of the work. We were workshopping the poem, and he's like, "This sounds like it's an elegy." And I go, "Well, yeah, it is." And he goes, "Well, then why don't you write the elegy?" write the damn thing. so so eventually it turned into a really long poem. I think it's like 7 or 8 pages. I don't know what it's going to be in the, in the finished book, but
Okay.
it's pretty long for me. I don't usually write
Right.
long.
Right.
But
Not quite an
it,
epic, but almost there.
yeah, but it, and it's odd. And I just, there's another one in there called Runaway Dreams,
Mhm.
and Drunk Monkeys just put it up
Mhm.
Monday. So
Okay, so it's a recent
it's
one.
out there now. Yeah, and it's I think 3 or 4 pages,
Oh, wow.
and it's all these dreams and things that were haunting me at the
Okay.
time, and you know, so that I think sometimes we don't write enough, talk enough about the dreams, especially recurring ones. I think we're
Mhm.
afraid, a shrink is going to latch on to us and go, okay, now I know what's going on with you.
Right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
possibly. But,
possibly.
the novel Frankenstein was a dream, that came into, Mary Shelley in the dreams. You never know what kind of product you can come up with, some ideas you can generate from dreams alone.
Well, it's your imagination.
Mhm.
It's you. It's your mind. It's just in a moment when perhaps you've allowed yourself to be more free with your imagination. Um, and
Right.
I don't know, maybe it means something. Who knows?
I'm sure it does. I'm sure there's some sort of meaning, some sort of creating something out of, yeah, I mean, you don't just create things out of a vacuum. I mean, I'm sure there's some sort of deeper personal meaning that, it's concealing from you, and its symbols, and its oddities. You also have been a high school teacher. I wondered what teaching how it's helped you explore yourself through poetry as well. It's interesting. I always ask people that I've also taught, what did they learn in themselves in teaching? Yeah, because it's always about the learning process as well as teaching. It's something that people are sometimes don't think about. A teacher actually also learning from their students. But
Oh man,
you really do.
you really do. Yeah. Um, yeah, for me it was a wonderful career. Um,
Huh?
it didn't pay very well,
Right,
but I have a pension now and a health plan, so it pays really well now.
right.
um, but it gave me space to raise 3 children of my own, and it was something I really enjoyed because I love kids. I really love teenagers. They crack me up. So that
Right.
that that was uh, that way it was terrific. But I have students, former students that are mentoring me right now.
Oh,
Um, yeah. they
excellent.
they went off and became professional writers while I was still teaching, and they've have these established careers. And then when I retired, and I was like, this is something I always wanted to do, and I always wanted to know whether I could, could could I be any good at this? And it's a real challenge for me, and I've always enjoyed a challenge. So I the first thing I wrote was a long nonfiction. We won't get into what it was, but anyway, so I contacted a student who had already a good 15-20 year career as a professional writer, and she writes for all the big names, things
Mhm.
that I may never get into, but she's
Right.
here all the time. And I just go, okay, so Beth, I've got 180,000 words. Now what do I do? And she starts laughing, and she's like, well, do you have a writing group? So, it's stuff like that.
Mhm.
I was like, that's a thing. And she's like, it's not only a thing, it's really important.
Right.
So, that was the beginning of me finding a critique group, and learning how important that was. And the first thing they taught me is like, so no one's going to read 180,000 words, no matter how good it is. No one's going to read. You need to cut at least half of it, which was
Wow.
painful. very painful.
Oh yeah, it's always very frustrating to do the editing, especially when they say cut half this.
Yeah, well, I taught my
Wow.
students, writing is rewriting, so I have to live by the mottos I taught them. But no, my
Right.
students in the classroom, even in my teaching career, I mean, they were so talented, so
Hmm.
many of them, and so interesting. And I think there's no question they made me a better human being, as my own children did, than I would have been without that, that discipline, you
Right.
know, even even learning,
Hmm.
not to uh you you with your own children you can, but with children in a classroom you don't get to tell them what you think about anything. You don't get to influence them that way.
Right.
So it's very interesting. Like I often wonder when they read my stuff now, if they're go like, I knew she thought that way. Because
Wow.
one of the things I love
Little
now
irony. Hmm.
is that I get to be the crazy old lady that's writing what I really think.
Right. A little
And
freedom
I
in
don't
there.
have
Yeah.
to, yeah, I don't have to hide anymore. And
Wow.
so there's all
Yeah.
these,
So you
yeah,
open, you unveil the whole madness, and just let it go. And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
interesting. A lot more. There's some people that I've heard say, when you're older, you're a lot freer. My grandmother used to talk about that. You're constrained, and when you're younger, there's quite a lot of social constraints on you as far as,
Hmm.
expressing yourself and things like that. When you get older, you just stop worrying about it.
Well, I had to keep my job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
My
now there's
kids
like,
needed a roof. They needed 3 squares, so I
right,
wasn't
right.
so cool with that. I
Mhm.
don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
Nobody lives with me but my dog.
Mhm.
You know, I
Be liberating in some ways.
so
Wow. So you've also won some contests and received some recognitions. Do you feel that those acknowledgments have affected your writing, have pushed you forward and given you some sort of momentum?
that's a good question. I mean, most of that has literally just happened in the
Uh-huh.
last like 6 months. Um, I don't know what's going on.
Maybe you're
I
super ultra talented and they just
Yeah,
didn't
I
know.
don't
I
know.
mean,
I mean,
maybe, who knows?
I'm really honored, um,
Hmm.
obviously, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because I come from a very different place than a lot of people who are writing. I'm a lot of, well, the people that are in my age group have been doing this all their lives. They're very scholarly. A lot of them have been like professors, and they've
Right.
got they've got cred.
Uh-huh.
And here I am, just like I wrote my first poem. My first published poem happened when I was 60.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah. So
Quite a
I'm
weight
very
there.
new.
But you're never too old. I mean, they say that
No,
quite a bit. You're
no.
never too old
Um,
to do anything.
and it's unbelievable what's happened to me since, really. That I would have gotten, I mean, I've gotten tons of rejections, but I don't worry about that. You know, I wanted to see if I could do it. And
Right.
if I wasn't good enough to get published, then okay, I'm not good enough. It was, and I still feel that way. I don't feel like I'm all that because I won something.
Right.
I'm still the same poet. I'm still the same person.
Hmm.
Um, but it is seeming to send me opportunities that I didn't have like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting.
I think it
And
maybe brings you some recognition and people start to pay a little more attention to you. And then,
mhm, they seem to, at least low, in my state, they seem to suddenly know I exist. Um, and so that's, I mean, that's a start, right? My goal from the beginning was just to earn readers.
hmm,
Every time I did a book event, it was like if I could get one reader that day, that was a win. Because
right.
I think it's very hard to earn readers. There are tons of poets I don't read.
Hmm. Yeah,
Don't
there's a lot out there.
I love poetry, but I don't. There's a subjective aesthetic that you have as a reader, you know, that,
Right.
I've read every Tom Robbins book ever written. I, I love him.
Mhm.
He's an acquired taste for some people. I don't know,
Sure.
some other authors, I can't plow through them.
Right. So would you maybe like to share a poem or two with us?
Um, okay. I hadn't, um, I don't know. I've got, the ones that I sent you are just sitting here.
Okay.
Um, how about, uh, I'm a tree hugger from way back. So, I was my middle child lives in the Santa Fe area now. So we were at the Bandelier National Monument, which is a
Mhm.
very cool place, very cool. And I saw this tree, which become obvious, and that's what started this. Staying power. The life of trees lies hidden in a web, messages worming tree to tree through the soil, wordless. Hike the Bandelier Trail and spy a lone pine, craggy but sturdy, growing from a fissure lodged in sheer vertical tuff. Another, lopped short quite young, horizontal, parallel to the valley floor, along the stream. Its new trunk holds, builds against impossible odds and gravity. A thicket of trees surrounds, straight and tall, stretched upward, uninterrupted. A canopy thickened and fed in perpetuity, grabbing sunlight, greedy, as though life cheats them. Do forests talk to trees? Oh, I've seen spidering roots cling to asphalt as blooms rain petals on the street, glimpsed a dainty cherry blossom tree flower from a boulder mid-field. The autumn maple's burning orange leaves surround the light pole its trunk envelops. Seen a sinkhole live oak root the periphery and hang midair. Seen trees spring out of trees, palms loop and twist decades in silent grief. And I know we are not unlike trees. That vertical, straightforward expectation changes that trajectory entirely. The oddity awes. We battle gravity, circumvent rock faces, altered for the next.
Wow, I mean, there's a lot of descriptive language and there's a good analogy to a person and people to the trees, and it's goes into a lot of the ecosystem dynamics. I like that poem a lot. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Quite interesting. So you said that was inspired by a trip and you saw a tree that just sort of captivated you.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's a widow thing, but you start to look for
Yeah,
things that inspire you to keep trucking.
right.
And
Of
trees are
course.
pretty amazing as things go. They're always finding a way to keep going.
Right, absolutely. There's a lot of literature on trees, a lot of, writings from authors on trees and how strong, I mean, Whitman wrote a lot about trees, for instance.
Mhm.
So, you've also, I'm not sure if I remember correctly reading in your bio if you were also a workshop instructor at some point. What did you learn in workshopping that you found that maybe you hadn't been able to access before when you were just by yourself writing?
Good question. I feel I felt this way in my teaching career as well. I only have a bachelor's degree.
Hmm?
Um, I was lucky enough to go to a school that offered a terrific liberal arts education, but I never manage to finish a master's anywhere. And so, I'm teaching, the AP English courses toward the end of my career, the gifted and talented classes, all these amazing kids, and I'm really underqualified to do it. So I was always, I've always had the habit of trying to take courses or take some, just to keep myself up to speed, to get myself going.
Mhm.
And, there was no way once I started writing poetry in my 60s that I felt like I had even the discipline to get an MFA at this point,
Mhm.
which is what, most poets seem to have. And so when I would feel that or find something being offered that, I knew, like, that would be a good thing for me to learn, or that would be a good person for me to learn from, or, something like that, I would take it. So I haven't taken that many.
Mhm.
I've been to Palm Beach twice. Last winter, just before COVID happened, I got into Maggie Smith's workshop.
Okay.
She's fabulous. That
Hmm.
was really a good experience. Um, and uh, I think that the first workshop I took, I went out because my daughter lives in Santa Fe, so I was going to visit her anyway, and there was a workshop offered by Jeffrey Levine from Tupelo Press
Okay.
um, at Truchas, which is like this amazingly isolated place out in in Georgia O'Keeffe country,
Mhm.
and that was an amazing workshop. I met I met some amazing poets. It was one of those things where you're sitting in the first day introductions and everyone's going around the circle, who they are, what they've done. And I'm thinking to myself the entire time, what am I doing here? Because that at that point I was completely unpublished. I had
Mhm.
been widowed like 4 months before. And I'm like, how did I even get in here? So that was like a real baptism by fire around some amazing
Hmm.
writers. It's just a great experience for me. And I'm still in touch with a lot of those writers. They were just great mentors and continue to be. So part of it is the
Wonderful.
interaction with others.
Right.
Part of it is, who you meet and what they, even sometimes turning around and making some like aside comment um, can be just so helpful because you don't know the rules of the game. You don't know how things work in a new business of any kind, right? So the ones that are experienced, um, and I found the poetry community to be incredibly generous, incredibly.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
Very
just there.
warm-spirited people.
Yeah, there isn't any, guarding information so that you can get something that they don't.
Right.
Um, it just doesn't work like that. It's just a really cool people and really smart people, really interesting people. They're all over the place. It's
Mhm.
like it's very cool. It's a very cool community to I feel very lucky to be sometimes included in it. And
Right.
but the workshop part of it for someone like me is completely invaluable.
Mhm.
I've learned so much about craft, um, and about how to go about, especially when you're stuck,
Mhm.
uh, ways
It's
to
always
unstuck
tough.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
when you have something to say and it's going to be good, but you have no idea how to get there, and uh, even like who to submit to. I mean, Jeffrey Levine at one point, he sat down and he just went through like every journal and publication around. It's just like, okay, this one's really hard. You know, this one's like you might get in there and stuff like that. This was the first time I'd heard of Finishing Line Press. It
Oh,
was it's in a journal. It's one of the ones that he said you could try for. And I'm like, okay.
we have about a remaining 5 minutes, and I'm just, gonna, I want to ask a general question. What do you think poetry teaches or confronts with about reality? What do we learn about, life from poetry? How does it help us cope?
Oh, I think. I often meet poems, because if you're writing, then you're reading a lot too.
Mhm.
Um, that just offer you a window into a truth you need to hear. Um,
Huh.
and if you're lucky, you run into that poem the day you really need it. So
Right.
that to me, but poetry is not this cryptic,
Mm.
inaccessible, difficult thing that no one can understand. Poetry is a story in miniature.
Mm.
It's the real thing.
Right.
It's the everyday experience that humans go through. The poem can be about that feeling when you wake up in the morning and you just can't quite get out of bed and your mind is racing through all the things that you have to do, and someone can write a poem about that and you just go, that's it, that is that experience, and you totally get it because we've all experienced it. um
Right.
yeah.
Language is so interesting in the way you can use words to represent reality and to talk,
Mhm.
and to open yourself up to kind of thinking in ways that you wouldn't normally think in the process of writing. I find that that happens to me so much when I'm writing. I pull out so many things that I don't know are even there. It's like we mentioned
Mhm.
dreams earlier. We don't understand dreams completely. I
Yeah.
sometimes compare writing to dreaming.
Hmm.
It's a kind of an interesting analogy for me. So we also, we do this interview series. We also have in the New York Parrot website, in which we publish. It's a media company, and we publish a lot of poetry and short fiction and things like that. So I would invite you to contribute if you want some time. You can just reach out
Thank
at the
you.
same email address. But if you also want to say anything like a good shout out or a thank you to editors, publishers, whoever, I think we have a couple minutes for that. To for you to kind of thank people out there that have influenced you positively.
The the danger in that is you're always going to forget someone that's really
True,
important.
very
There's
true.
there are so many um, people that have helped me. Um, but I could mention a couple of organizations, beyond Finishing Line Press and that whole
Mhm.
crew, who have been, so supportive and seem to continue to believe in me. Um, there's an organization on Hilton Head Island where I live called the Island Writers Network, and I stumbled into them uh, the day that my student told me to go and find a writing group. So I Googled one, and that's what came up, and I've been with them ever since.
Mhm.
And they're just a wonderful group. Again, now they are not all poets. In fact, most of them are fiction and nonfiction writers, but they have that same complete lack of ego. Just we we lift up each other, and everyone else rises with you, and it's just a really wonderful group. Um, so I see them regularly. That's who I do the open mics through. And also in Beaufort, just down the road, is the Pat Conroy Literary Center that has been incredibly supportive to local writers. And that's where I did my first big poetry reading before I even had a book. To give you an idea how supportive they are, I
Right.
was know nothing among poet laureates and such, and I got to read.
That's
And
wonderful.
yeah, I think at the time I only had written maybe 20 poems total.
Hmm. That's still a good number, though. That's a fair number of poems.
Yeah,
Some
I'm
people
slow.
don't write that much.
Yeah, I'm slow. I'm lucky if I write one a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be time consuming to wait through the processes it develops. It sort of plays in your mind before you put it to paper sometimes.
Hmm.
You know,
It's
if-
hard.
but yeah, and you
Hard.
can
I
have
mean,
that mental block where it's like, I don't know, I can't get it out.
well, a poem is so compressed that you have to find the right word.
Right.
What is it? How do I say it? What's the right metaphor? What's the right way to,
Exactly. You have to let it
how am
play.
I to
Play.
think?
Your mind kind of has to toss and turn a little bit.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
takes a little time to work it out, and it's almost like a math problem. And I think it's subconscious does a lot of the work for you, and you kind of have to think about it all day. I mean, writers are always thinking of through things, trying
Right.
to figure out new ways to say things. So
Yeah,
thank
I walk a long, long way, and often
Right.
that's when it comes to me.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So thank you for joining us on the program. It's been wonderful talking to you. And again, I invite you to submit to the New York Parrot. We usually do social issues and stuff of that nature. So that
Yeah,
if
I do a lot of
something,
that.
yeah, so we'd love to hear from you.
Okay.
And just our subscribers out there, you guys are excellent. Thanks for your support. We're looking for 1 million subscribers. We are the best and only TV station for global writing community, artistic community, creative minds out there. If you want a platform, reach out to us at literary corner at newyorkparrot.com. That's the email. And you can always donate at paypal.me/nyparrot to help us continue our programming and improve upon it. And we do this daily. This is a daily show, only daily show, offering for our creative writer community out there for a voice. So anybody, just come and get in touch with us. We're open to anybody, talking to anybody. If you have a new work coming out, please be in touch with us. And also subscribe to our channel, leave us comments, give us a like, a thumbs up on the YouTube, and please spread the word for us. We need as much help as we can get getting people out there. And thank you again, Elizabeth. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.